misery and suffering to the Liberian people. The former VP outlined the platform of his government built around agriculture, roads, education, sanitation, and tourism, which has an acronym, ARREST. The opposition Unity Party political leader stated that under President George Weah, Liberia is threatened by the same factors that were used by insurgents to destroy the country during the Civil War. Joining us now to discuss the state of the nation of Liberia and his ambition to become the next president of the West African country is Joseph Nyuma Boakai, former vice president of Liberia and the presidential candidate of the Unity Party of Liberia. Good morning, and thank you for joining us on the morning show.
Thank you for having me.
Well, quickly, you've been Minister of Agriculture.
That's right.
You've been Vice President, yes. 2006 to 2018. And now you say you want to be a president. You are 78. The man that is there, George Weah, he may be in the opposition party, but he belongs to a younger generation. What is the ambition? What's the proposition? Why do you think you need to go back there to help the people of Liberia?
Well, I always say that whatever is chasing you, if it doesn't stop running, you can't stop running. Our country had not seen the kind of leadership that is needed to transform that country. And Mr. Weah is not a person to do it. We knew it, but we gave them the chance to take him. And now we know very well that it's not a test. We know for sure that Weah was not cut up for that. And so we cannot allow our country to degenerate further.
Well, how has Liberia degenerated under the leadership of President Weah? Although I understand he's been away since October watching football.
That's right.
In Qatar. But that can be the big problem. What exactly do you
And I did say that Mr. Weah's presence in the country and his absence were all the same, except that when he's absent, he takes the money away. Mr. Weah, we all know that he was not really cut up for this kind of job. Mr. Weah is doing exactly what he's cut up for. And Liberia, when we were in power, Liberia was removed from being a failed state to a country that was giving hope to the people. We put in better infrastructure. We were able to remove the stigma of a nation that was failing. And right now, you go to Liberia, people who know Liberia, the country has gone backward in every area. It's all corruption, stealing with impunity. A country that is, I call, is on autopilot because there's no leadership. And we cannot continue to risk the future of unborn generation, not to even mention the ones that are there, young people that just languishing. And so we need to rescue Liberia.
All right. We hear you that you need to rescue Liberia. What's your plan? I know we talked about the ARREST, AREST. So can you detail how you hope to rescue Liberia?
I came with the ARREST, and I didn't put 2 arrows because we didn't want to frighten anybody. ARREST, AREST. The immediate plan is to start with what most of the people know and the area I have been in, that is agriculture. Because in agriculture, 70 to 80% of our people, where we were able to raise their lives, produce marketing, where I came from, People were able to send their children to school. But we believe that agriculture will not do well if you don't have good roads. So we go to the R, and we talk about roads. I think Mr. Weir misunderstood me when I said road number 1, road number 2, road number 3. I was not talking about this community roads and just for the sake of putting something maybe and making money. I'm talking about roads that are very strategic to development. Roads, farm to market roads that help to reduce prices because of the possibility of people moving with commodities and keeping prices low. Roads that are able for medical facilities and even for education. Then I went to E, arrest, education. The number of children that we had in school had dropped drastically, firstly because of the lack of good teachers, access to good schools, children sitting on the floor, and there's nobody that even has the feeling that life is beyond them. Then you go to the S, sanitation. We are in developing country. We are not advanced in curative medicine. But if you keep the communities clean, if you take sanitation and keep the people in the rural community, you give them clean environment, and even in the urban area, if you go to Monrovia today, everywhere is garbage, everywhere. Good health start with good environment. So then you talk about LRT tourism. Liberia has the possibility for tourism. And that tourism combined with the hospitality industry will create some jobs for the young people immediately. They'll be able to give opportunity to the rural community in the cottage industry. They'll be able to give the young people a job in the management of hotels and things that will give them the confidence that there is a future for them.
All right. So I'd like to delve into the politics of Liberia, going back to the post-war politics of Liberia and how things are pretty much run. And a lot of people are also saying that you are part of the old guard. And why are you trying to run in a country that is largely dominated by young people? You served in Samuel Doe's government. And President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf couldn't openly endorse you while the elections went on and on, because it was stated that she come out to say that I'm not supporting any of the two candidates when he went to runoff before the incumbent president, George Weah, got in. So a lot of people are saying you're part of the old guard, and what is this vendetta? That things are not probably as you say they are, but they also agree to the fact that yes, there's been massive corruption and all of that. But what new are you going to bring to Liberia? Because you are part of the old guard. You've been in and out of the circle of power since '83, since the Doe time.
Yes, but I also have a record that goes with me. I served, and once I was asked that why can you do as president that you couldn't do as vice president, and I said, if you want to see a race car, you put on the racetrack, not in the garage. As vice president, the Constitution is well unclosed to say the vice president presides over the Senate without a vote, except there's a tie. A vice president assists the president. To assist the president is a matter of choice, whether the president wants to be assisted or not. And my records show that I assisted the president very well. The fact that she went the way she went, well, she knows it better than I. But I belong to Liberia, that's my country. and I have a right constitutionally to run for president because I still believe that there are a lot I can offer this country that I have not been given the chance to do. And that's my right constitutionally.
Okay, sir. Let me ask you this. Do you have the support of Madam Ellen Johnson Sirleaf? We have all of that issue when a road was commissioned, and the road you had superintended over it on the way to Lofa County, which is where you come from. Okay? And she said, well, that just happened. She didn't know that the two senators would be there, and she was not endorsing anybody. But this time around, you are leading the opposition party. Do you have her support? What is your relationship with her? Second, sorry to interrupt you. And the second point I wanted to raise is that you've accused President George Weah of profligacy, of corruption, how the census and population preparation process, has been abused, how, money, has been mismanaged, how he has abandoned the country. Is he back, by the way? The last time I saw him, he was still watching football in Doha. So are you going to conduct a probe? Are you saying that if you win the election in 2023, you will, although your campaign slogan is AREST, are you going to add the other R and arrest people?
That's a good question. The Liberian people have lived a long time with impunity. The Liberian people have suffered a lot, and they have a decision to make. The Liberian people would like to see justice. They like to see ill-gotten wealth restored, or people who got rich overnight to account. I don't think it's a bad thing for you to say, this is what I did and this is what I got out of what I have done. We continue to see a country that is without good roads, children without hope for education, and people are getting rich overnight. I don't think it's a bad thing to ask them to say, how much did you earn in the period and how were you able to get what you have? I think that's what the Liberians would like to see, and that's what I would like to do.
Absolutely.
But sir, I wanted you to talk about Madam Ellen Johnson Sirleaf.
Madam Ellen Johnson Sirleaf is not my problem. Madam Ellen Johnson Sirleaf and I worked. There's not a time we had any dispute. The decision she made is her decision. She knows why she did it. I'm not going to go into that.
Let's talk about your economic policy for Liberia. Under President George Weah, we've seen food prices rise and people unable to afford staple food in the country, and inflation rates have gone up. What are your plans to improve the lot of Liberians and to ensure that food prices come down so that the average Liberian can afford to eat and feed their family?
Well, I don't know where you come from with the information that food prices are affordable, because when Mr. Weah took power, we were told that rice price was going to come down to $500 a bag. $500 a bag, Liberian dollars, you compute at a rate of 150. Today, rice, they just announced, is over $17 US a bag. And you tell me, for people, most of whom are earning less than $100, I don't know how they can afford that, send their children to school and go. So it is not true that food price has come down. Life is very difficult in Liberia. I live there.
That's what I asked. I said that food prices have gone up.
Oh,
and people
okay.
have complained.
I'm sorry.
What are your plans to make
None of
the
our
lives
plans
of
are
this?
that. In fact, is to start with what Liberian people, touching the lives of the small people in agriculture. If 70 to 80% of the people depend on agriculture, I want to start with that where I worked before, and I know that it was possible that at a time we were importing only about 30% of our staple food. And the potential is there. The soil is there. The farmers are there. All the cooperatives that we had that were working, none of them are functioning. Liberians, even the cocoa and coffee we used to export, there's no market for it. I have gone in the rural community and I've met Liberians. If you want to export your cocoa and coffee, you have to take it to Guinea because all the marketing channels that were set up, nobody has paid attention to them. We have to start giving the people hope from where they believe and what they know. And I know we are able and we have the potential to at least produce food to feed a country in a reasonable way.
As we start to wrap up, one thing quickly, and it was a good thing you talked about rice because we remember the famous Tolbert rice riots in the 70s and how it impacted in Liberia. But one thing real quickly, we saw the effect of Ebola, how it ravaged the healthcare sector in Liberia and also COVID. The healthcare sector in Liberia is at an all-time low. What are you going to do to ramp up the healthcare sector once again in Liberia?
No, that's why I talk about starting with sanitation, where the people are able to have a preventive healthcare delivery system, while we try to build the right infrastructure for curative medicine. The healthcare sector is deplorable because of the same sanitation, the lack of good drinking water. You go to Monrovia, most often the hospitals say typhoid. It starts with water, quality of water. I had said that I want to make sure that we keep not just the rural, but urban communities clean, the schools and all of these places of public use, keep them very much sanitary and give the people some feeling that they can live in a clean environment. The healthcare sector, the DILTIF, it is not that it is not on paper, it is there. It's a matter of affordability. It's a matter of even those that are giving healthcare services, they are not given the right incentives. And most of the people will prefer leaving the country, those who can afford. And we cannot afford that because most of the people cannot afford to leave.
Well, we have just about 2 minutes. There's a question I wanted to ask.
All right.
Many years back, I reviewed a book written on Liberia. And I know that in Liberia, there's an establishment, a very powerful establishment. I don't want to go into the details on TV. Where do you stand in relation to that establishment? And is it true, as alleged by your critics, that you are running a tribal ticket? Tribal. Ethnic.
Oh, no.
And you keep complaining about the Kongwa people.
If there's anybody I complain about the actions of people, the neglect of people, not about, I'm one of those persons who I can say I'm well integrated. I went to institutions that we mixed up well. The idea is I do not talk about people, I talk about actions of people. And I think there's a lot that is wrong in our society with respect to people rather than talking about people themselves. And I am well connected in Liberia.
With the establishment.
Everywhere.
You know what the establishment
I
is.
know, but again,
I'm sure you do. Thank you very much for joining us, sir.
Thanks again.
Thank you very much for coming to the Monash.
a major election. But first, I'll challenge Nobel Peace Laureate and former Liberian President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf on corruption, nepotism, and the prosecution of war crimes. Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, thank you for joining me on Upfront. It's been more than a year since you left office as president of Liberia. You came into power off the back of a peace deal that followed decades of war and violence and coups. You ended your mandate with Liberia's first successful democratic transition in 73 years. You're the first woman to lead an African nation, a Nobel Peace Prize winner. And yet some might say you've been more popular abroad than at home. Say to them?
I really went around the country where I spent a lot of time going into rural areas, being able to work with farmers and rural women and traders. And, you know, I found that I was very well connected with them. But also if in the city, some of the positions I took were maybe not popular, then that's fine. But I also know that I had to be out there in the global community, being able to mobilize the support for Liberia, being able to restore Liberia's creditworthiness, being able to make sure that the partnership that we needed, you know, was put in place to enable us to achieve our development goals. I'm very happy with what I was able to do.
When you became president in 2005, you pledged a war on corruption. You called it a national cancer and, quote, public enemy number one. But then you yourself were hit with a variety of scandals, your government, and you later said you, quote, underestimated the cultural roots of corruption. But surely Liberian culture isn't to blame for corruption. Liberian politicians, such as yourself and others, are to blame for corruption.
Well, let me tell you, politicians are part of the culture. Politicians are part of the value system.
But it sounds like you're blaming the public, the country, for the actions of politicians.
I'm not blaming anybody. No. I think you're just talking without listening. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying dependency, dishonesty came part of the Liberian culture over the many years of deprivation. The institutions to fight corruption were not there.
You mentioned the institutions, and yet you did have an independent corruption watchdog, the General Auditing Commission, which found 20 government ministers, accused 20 government ministers of corruption, and you failed to prosecute any of them. Why?
Well, let me tell you something. All of those reports were sent to our Liberia Anti-Corruption Agency. They were also sent to our legislature. We organized a particular unit in the presidency to be able to look at all of those cases and to be able to send them forward to the Ministry of Justice wherever they thought prosecution was necessary.
So why weren't they prosecuted?
Well, because our system is like that. If you want to really understand Liberia, you need to dig a little bit deeper. You need to understand our culture, our values, our systems. And the way to tackle it is not always to just make a whole lot of noise about it, but to quietly build those institutions that are going to be long-lasting.
What is it about your country's institutions and values and culture that led you to appoint 3 of your sons and your sister to top government positions? Something that led to your fellow Liberian Nobel Peace Laureate, Lema Bowie, to resign from her post as head of Liberia's Peace and Reconciliation Commission. Does she not understand Liberian culture or institutions?
No. Let's put it this way. First of all, when I took office, if you're talking about one of my sons was always in place a couple of administrations before I took place, and I didn't fire him. Yes, I didn't think